Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight. I've got 7 o'clock Central Time in a couple seconds here, so I'll pull up my other PowerPoint. And welcome to Pro Tips for UAS. We're going to be talking about registration, and we're going to be talking about checklists. And of course, like always, we're going to be going over the basic rules as a refresher for everyone. So as I pull up this PowerPoint, thank you again for joining us. We'll get through some of the reminders. We're going to have Q&A, of course. You see the Q&A box. Pull out Um, any questions you might have, please keep them relative to the topic tonight. At the end, we'll go over the questions that we have time for, and if we don't get to your questions, then refer to your local FSDO or your local drone pro. Both are good to go. I got a number of folks joining me tonight. We'll kind of tag team. We'll go back and forth on the PowerPoint presentation. So hopefully y'all enjoy this, and I'll start advancing my slide as long as I can have confirmation that it looks good. I don't have any sound included, so as long as I'm moving on to slide 2 and y'all can see it, we're good to go.
It looks good, Levi.
Awesome. Thank you, Laura. All right. So here's our pro tips series. We do one almost every Wednesday. Laura does one almost every Saturday. If you've never joined us on pro tips, thank you, and definitely sign up. We'll have QR codes at the end for you to sign up for all of them. They're recurring. So if we have any changes, you should get them automatically on your calendar. It's pretty slick. Here's our pro tips team. Jurgen, Troy work for the FAA. They help us set all this stuff up. They do so much work for us to have these happen. I'm Levi Eastlick. I'm chief pilot for the Wisconsin Bureau of Aeronautics, which is part of the Wisconsin DOT. I'm also a FAA lead safety rep, same as Laura and Steve last day as well. Laura runs all the Saturday morning ones, and we'll do all the Q&A, and Steve helps us behind the scenes with Troy and Jurg and comes up with some great presentations. So can't do it without the team. I already mentioned the Q&A. If you can't hear us, you have audio, video issues, we're doing the best we can. It might be on your end, it might be on our end. Who knows? If you're having real hard time, leave, jump back on. If that don't work, call in with the phone on your invite. There's a phone number and stuff. If you're here for at least 50 minutes, if you're signed in with the same email as FASafety.gov, here for 50 minutes, you'll get wings credit for this one because we're talking about regulations. We're talking about all kinds of good stuff that applies to anybody. Already talked about audio. Here's some cool, interesting facts and figures. They're a little outdated, but just take a look at them. I'm not going to read them to you. Got one more slide too, some other ones. Drones are everywhere. I'm going to say UAS and drones and RC airplanes and RC helicopters interchangeably. Legally, it's all the same stuff. Right? I know they fly differently, they're different things, but if I say drone, if I say UAS, it's all the same. So don't hold that against me. Here's the other slide I was talking about. It's just growing. The use cases are growing. It's a camera with wings or rotors, but it can get into some tight spaces and compared to buying a airplane or helicopter, drones sometimes are a lot cheaper than those things. So I'm a man pilot as well as a drone pilot, so I definitely like all facets of aviation. Um, each piece has its own role, and drones have a very interesting and growing role right now. So quick disclaimer, I'm not the FAA. I don't work for the FAA. Our other speakers, they don't work for the FAA. We're just here to help you all have fun flying, fly safe, fly legally, don't get in trouble, do things the best we possibly can help you do them. So don't take what we say as FAA advice. Please don't take anything in here as legal advice either. We're just trying to help you out. If you want an actual answer for legal stuff, here's the FAA contacts. Send them an email, and they will get back to you with actual legal advice, not from us. On that note, we are recording this, I believe. Yeah, we are recording this. The goal is to, as long as the recording works out, we're going to put it on Laura's YouTube channel. She's able to do it. Again, we're not doing this for the FAA, but Laura helps us with this, and she's more than willing usually to put it on her YouTube channel. So if you missed this or there's something good, we'll drop the link to her YouTube and make sure y'all can get to it later. So I'm gonna start And Laura, can you just double check that we are recording this?
Yes, we
All
are
right.
recording it.
Awesome. Thank you. I missed that. So our speakers tonight, I already talked about myself, which is silly. We got Louis, tons of experience. We could talk, have a whole webinar on this whole group and their experience and some stuff they've done. So we've got a great panel here. Justin couldn't join us tonight, but is very experienced as well and helped put together some of these slides. And Troy, and I think I saw Greg was on too. So we've got just some of the best drone pilots I know on this panel tonight. So hopefully you don't hear me talk a whole lot. We're going to talk about registration. We're going to talk about checklists. We're going to go over the rules, show you some resources. Hopefully this is all review for everybody, but if not, cool. I'm glad you're here. Some questions. So why do we need to register? Louis, I think if you want, I'll let you kind of talk through these slides. I got a couple of videos that are thrown in the middle of them. So I'll let you go ahead and run with these, and then I'll chime in
That's
as
fine.
needed.
We can definitely jump off on that. Hello and welcome to everybody. Thank you very much for joining us today. We always appreciate anybody that can take the time to join us in on one of these webinars. Obviously, just great information to go over. Today, we will start by just kind of reviewing some of the stuff that we already should know, but it's always good to bring this back up as a refresher, if we would, and talk about registering any changes that might have happened of recent and when and where we really need to be focused on this. Again, this slide is a terrific point to start it off with. So many people ask still to this day, why do I need to register? And the biggest answer is right there in big fat text in the front line is that it's federal law. 14 CFR Part 48, obviously, as you know, does require that any drone that's going to be flown within that is registered. And obviously, the enforcement is starting to get a little bit more regular, to tell you the truth. Over time, it was something that we talked about on and on, but there wasn't a lot of enforcement happening, to tell you the truth. But I can tell you personally that has changed. There's a lot more enforcement happening, and obviously, as you know, failure to register a drone that requires registration may result in regulatory and criminal penalties. Those civil penalties are up to 27.5, and that's per occurrence. As that works out that way, you don't really want to run into that. Criminal penalties include fines of up to $250,000 and/or imprisonment, as you see on here. Now, I can tell you personally, I'm out of the Las Vegas FISDO, and we have done a lot of, as we'll call them, kind of boot camp classes, so to speak, of people that have possibly maybe come close to an enactment of this type of stuff. We are in Las Vegas, guys. So this type of stuff happens all the time, right? People don't register a drone, or they come out here and fly a drone on the strip and think, hey, I got to get the best vacation shots I can, or otherwise, without doing any homework. But I can tell you that these civil penalties do come down the line, and we all want to try and avoid them as best as we can. If you'll move on to the next one there, kind sir, thank you very much. So part 107, let's talk about the registration on there. Separate registration for each drone. Also, I do get questions all the time about, hey, I have a Part 107 license, I fly commercially, but I also fly my FPV. And I fly my FPV on occasions, just less than 249 grams, so I don't need to register it, right? That is an incorrect statement. If you are a Part 107 pilot, you need to register every drone that you have in your arsenal that needs to be out there on there. So this is one of those things that definitely come up on the other side, and this is a question that comes up very often because there's a lot of gray area here, and it hasn't necessarily been outlined in the past. But again, recreational flyers, any drone under 0.55 pounds or 250 grams, 249 to be exact, really, flying purely for fun must be registered. Commercial flyers, Part 107, all drones under the Part 107 must be registered regardless of weight. And of course, if they're just flown recreationally, you've got some exempt rules that fall into there. But in today's world, guys, it's $5. Register the drone. Help the entire aviation department, across the U.S. just by having that registration. It's so much easier for us to possibly stay on the right side of the law with this, and make it that much easier for the Leos that are trying to go out there and kind of manage this out there as well. If you guys can go through there, so recreational use registration, again, one registration for the pilot is good for any drone. Again, this is something that I get asked about a good bit on the FPV side. If you happen to have 10 FPV drones, recreational flyers all in your repertoire, you don't have to register each and every one of those. A lot of those may be privately built or self-built, and obviously don't necessarily have a manufacturer's serial number to work with or otherwise. This is something specific to a recreational use registration that's good for good for any drone across there. The remote ID registration, obviously been in place since March of 2025. Most everything across there, it does ask you inside the registration now. Obviously, if you're jumping onto Drone Zone, if you have it as a separate device, or if your drone is remote ID regulatory, compliant right from the manufacturer. And again, most of the people flying DJI or some of the other companies that are out there, obviously, are probably working in a compliant factory right from the factory. Um, FAA Drone Zone continues to just get better over time, guys. If you have not been there in some time, please do me a favor. Take a moment, go out there, look at that. Now it's separated out where you can manage the inventory of your individual devices. You can manage all of your previous waivers and everything else. It's become they've really changed the graphical UI, so it's a lot more pleasing on the eyes, easy to navigate, and it should be a tool for you on a regular basis, not just for what you have registered, but again, what you've registered in the past. If you guys are looking for maintenance records or otherwise internally, maybe looking at when you registered a specific drone if you haven't had back in there. In the commercial world, this happens all the time. People think, well, I have one drone. Why would that happen that way? Well, I manage a fleet of about 22 Inspire 2s. When you run through that run and you try to keep up with everybody on the other side, it's good to go back and maybe see if one was had fallen off or one had gone off on the other side. It's great to see your old waiver requests, whether they were denied, canceled, expired, or otherwise. It's all information that's available there for on the Drone Zone as well. Appreciate you, Levi. Again, going in through there, it's a $5 registration still to this day on there. You receive your FAA certificate and registration number, and then one of the things that comes up from there, I've met a few people of recent that have received that. They carry their license around. I even met one gentleman at a local flying area where he had his license taped to the back of his remote. I mean, it couldn't have been more prepared than that. Unfortunately, though, he did not have his FAA number on his aircraft. So you're carrying your license, but ultimately you're still working yourself into a possible situation if you run into again, if there's a ramp inspection or something else that happens there, you want to make sure you're properly prepared. Please make sure that when you receive your registration, that whether it be via a sticker or even if it's handwritten, if it has to be, right? Something is better than nothing to make sure that your airframe is registered. And again, it's something that other people need to be able to view. No different than your license plate on your car, the back of the tail wing when you're getting on your commercial aircraft. Everybody gets on there and has no problem looking that they're jumping on FI 295 to Fort Lauderdale. This is the same concept, guys. So make sure that the aircraft is actually on there. All drones must be registered except those that weigh less than 250 grams, excuse me, and are flown exclusively under the exception for recreational flyers. We mentioned that earlier. Just because your drone is under the 250-gram limit does not mean that you're necessarily flying it in that capacity. Please just make sure that you're flying in the right capacity and or that it's registered if otherwise. Drones that are registered under the exception for recreational flyers cannot be flown for Part 107 operations. And it's pretty standard procedure for all my guys I know as well that if you're a Part 107, it doesn't matter if it's a tiny hawk. I mean, get these things registered out there and just have it so that you're protected across the board because you are flying commercially. It is a commercial license to fly at all times. And even though you may just be having some fun at the park with your son, you're still properly licensed as a Part 107 pilot. Super important that you stay up on top of that as well. Again, that label required on the drone's external surface, as well as carrying the certificate. This is something that I know out here in Las Vegas, they don't really bypass. If you get, PD shows up on site and you're unable to present a paper copy of these things, we start running into problems. It's simple enough to I personally carry a 3-ring binder of these items together. And whenever I'm flying, it's opened and it's on my deck, which means if in the case that I actually get a ramp inspection or a Leo came up or otherwise, they could actually start going through my documentation while I safely bring the aircraft back. And that's something to keep in mind pretty often. Sometimes there's a neighbor involved, or maybe you're in a neighborhood and you've got a property owner otherwise involved. Things can get hectic. Try and have your paperwork in a readiness situation to make it as easy as possible for anybody that needs to view it, albeit that neighbor or in this case, law enforcement or otherwise. Again, just looking at a couple of notes that I made here, guys, let's talk about there. If you have not taken the trust safety test and carried proof of that, then again, we fall into that not compliant with the regulation of recreational flying, right? Again, if you're recreational flying, you must have that trust safety test and carry the proof along with you. It's a very, very simple test to take. Please take the time and do so. I would say, I tell all my Part 107 guys just take it in addition. You know what I mean? Just, it can't hurt anything. Have this on file. It's one of those things. Again, keeping in mind that all the personal, the registration of these drones under each one of these is important. The registrations are valid for 3 years, by the way, and now can be easily renewed through Drone Zone. It's just a very simple process. You can even select multiples if you have multiple in your arsenal and you need to go through. Maybe you registered two or three of them at the same time in a commercial capacity. We run into this pretty often. Again, keeping in mind registrations cannot be transferred between operation types and or operators for that matter. That's something that's also come up of recent. Just because the drone is registered does not mean that it's registered if you sell it, right? If you sell the drone, it needs to be re-registered under the new owner and pilot. That cannot be a transference of that process just because the drone, quote unquote, was registered. This is that case where I just fall back to the idea of a license plate, right? Even though you sell your car, you're still going to keep your license plate, either transfer it to a new vehicle or otherwise. So keep in mind, it's of that same concept. The registration is required by federal law for all applicable drones. Marking and certificate is required. And again, these civil penalties, as we talked about in that previous slide, can get quite expensive very quickly. Do we have another one on that one? These are pretty great and straightforward. So here we go. Let's talk about the remote ID registration, guys. It did become effective in September 16th, 2023. We talked about it and we presented on it a few times until it actually came to fruition, right? But we are here and we are now. Required on all registered drones unless you're flying in a FRIA with an approved recreation device or otherwise. Again, does not broadcast any personal information. This is a great step towards the further UAS integration of obviously the other aviation that's going on in the skies. This is a great way that we can start to be represented as more than just hobbyist drone pilots, right? This is a case of sharing the FAA space and the airspace in a proper and responsible manner. And this does give some tools. Again, not all the tools are yet available. And we don't even know where this technology, truthfully, will bring us as the foundation that it has. But I think that it's important that these are the steps that we take in moving forward. So I know there's still a lot of questions out there in remote ID. How is it used? How is it broadcast? How is it seen? Do pilots get to see it? Is somebody in a helicopter, capable of seeing my drone or seeing the ID? And all these questions are valid in a lot of sense. And to tell you the truth, a lot of them are still gray area, right? But what we do know is it's the absolute step towards further, UAS integration into those airspaces. Standard remote ID built into the drone software from the manufacturer. Again, most likely if you own a drone that's manufactured after September of 2022, probably they've started on this. You probably have a remote ID compliant drone. There are some great remote ID modules and add-on components that are out there now as well. So again, just make sure that you're familiar with whether or not your drone does have that. This is another case where I get a lot of people that may have previously registered a drone that they've got, and now they're coming up on renewal, right? Please check to see if something in the firmware or otherwise has been activated for your specific drone. This is a very simple Google search to find these things out in today's world and see if that's the case, and make sure that on your updated registration that you do mark that it is device ID compliant or remote ID compliant.
Awesome.
Looking at a couple of these other questions and stuff on there. I mean, this is a pretty comprehensive overview, and we'll definitely open up any Q&A that has anything. If you have any questions on how to move about the drone zone or otherwise, please drop them in the chat, and we'll be sure to get to them at the end of the run in there as well. As you can see, the new face of the FAA Drone Zone has made it a lot easier to get some quick information without even having to log in. I took some screenshots earlier on there, and thanks again, Levi, for backing me up with this presentation. Unfortunately, mine had a little bit of a hard time, but as you can see, simple, helpful links right there are so great, right? To register your drone, to download the Before You Fly app, which has gotten so much better over time as well, if you haven't used that. The Take the Trust exam, the UAS in Spanish, right? All of these topics are right there on the front, so you don't even have to log all the way in to get to them, as you can see right on there as well. Keeping in mind that, again, that device inventory, as you get more into the commercial services of flying multiple airframes, you cannot beat having this managed inventory inside the FAA to revert back to with all of your FAA numbers in one spot. Simple exports as well. Great information about the safety procedures and the Privacy Act and all the above inside there. Don't hesitate to use this as an all-the-time resource, guys. I know too many people that use this as a one-time resource, and this should be something that you go back to as often as possible. Start your paths here as well as on the FAA safety.gov for sure.
Yeah, Louis, I agree completely. And don't forget, you can do your airspace authorizations. You get waivers to rules. You can do all that cool stuff on there for folks that have never
With
been on
drop
Drone
downs
Zone.
and text boxes nowadays instead of just
Yeah, So
like
easy.
a guideline on how you could possibly enter them. But in today's world, it's just a beautiful, setup of check boxes and drop downs that you can choose and enter in for your operational waiver, enter in for your airspace waiver, whatever it may be. So yeah, they've really, really done a great job, and they continue to work on it. It's something that comes up all the time in the soon to be upgraded path. So use that as the best resource you can, guys.
Yeah, it's so easy. And I'll give you a if you want, Louis, I'll give you a break couple slides. We're gonna go
Oh,
through
appreciate you.
um just real basic if you've never registered, what you need to do. It's very simple. We got some screen shares that kind of walk you through step by step. So we'll just bust through these real quick. Here are the basic rules. You gotta be at least 13. If you're 12, you can't do this legally. You gotta have someone else do it for you, and a U.S. citizen, of course. So create an account for the drone for 107. We're talking part 107 now, not recreational. You've got to
Yep.
know some stuff about the drone. Who makes it? DJI, Skydio. Who is the manufacturer? Is it home built? That's an option. Um, so who made it? What's the model name? What's the serial number? If it's a home built, you may not have some of the stuff. That gets a little interesting, but it still can be done through Drone Zone. You need the remote ID serial number. Again, part 107, if you're flying part 107, has to be registered part 107, it must have remote ID. It's that simple. 107 must have remote ID. That will have a separate serial number, whether it's a module or built into the aircraft controller, it will have a different serial number. And then you got to pay, right? $5 per drone. Super easy. So here's the website. Right? Assuming your main account, you signed into your account. This is what it's going to look like. If you've never been there, it's pretty slick. There's all those nice drop downs that Louis was just talking about. There's so many things you can do in this website, but we're talking about registering your drone. So where it says launch drone and pilots, drone owners and pilots dashboard, we're going to go and we're going to click on that, and that will pop up your window to show what it looks like. So you click on that screen and it looks like this. So it shows
There
all
you
of your
go.
inventory. If you've never done it, you'll have a big 0 and 0, 0. It's as easy as manage accounts, manage device and inventory. If you're like Louis or me and you have a whole fleet of people and a whole fleet of drones, you set up a business account and you just kind of manage who does what in the account. But your own account, really simple, really easy. Put your own information in. You click on that manage device inventory, click add a device. It's that straightforward. You go through the drop downs, fill out the information I just told you to be ready with, and then don't forget broadcast info. Does it broadcast, yes or no? If it does, you just select what type, standard or module. That straightforward and simple. Literally, that's it. Can't beat it, right? It's that
No, it's pretty
easy.
straightforward. They have made
Yeah.
it as easy as possible.
Don't forget when you're done, print off the registration certificate for each drone if you're flying 107. Print them all off, and then make sure you save a digital copy. Wind can blow it away, whatever. But you want that paper copy, and then don't forget to label the aircraft. We got a couple slides on that coming up. Recreational, same exact process with a couple exceptions. If you already have a 107 account, all you have to do sign in your 107 account and go add account type. And then you'll see here, set up a recreational flyer account. You can use all your information, just transfer it over. It's really easy. I've done this because I fly both. I've got some aircraft that I won't put remote ID on, so I gotta go fly them in a FRIA. So you use both. Um, if you're flying recreationally now, that whole 250 grams, 0.55 pounds rule comes into play, right? We can fly purely for fun with a little tiny drone with no remote ID in this one instance. So we wouldn't have to register it. It gets interesting, right? And that's only recreational. 107, that doesn't apply. So that's really the only difference. There
That's it.
is, that's it. It's all the same as 107. It's that simple. I mean, if you have all that info ready to go with your debit card, 3 minutes and you've got your drone registration done, ready to go fly. Don't forget to label. All right, here's what one of those certificates looks like. I think this one is a 107, but I don't remember. This is an old one. It's blurry anyway, but you got to have a copy with it. That certificate number,
Mhm.
that's what needs to go on the drone. Here's a picture from the FAA, how to do it. You can write it with a marker. You gotta be able to see it, right? Like Louis was saying, LEO shows up. Whose drone is this? They can look up that number, and it's to your name or to your business name, however it's set up. So you can use a marker, you can engrave it, you can use label makers, you can use stickers, you can use stencils and spray paint, whatever, as long as it's legible and
However
it's
it gets
stuck
on
there.
there. Yeah, however it
Exactly.
gets on there for sure.
Not complicated, right? But it's got to be on there. The big thing I want everyone to be aware there's scams out there. Here's some sites just did, I literally Googled drone registration, and the first four were not the drone zone. They were people that were charging you to do all the same work, a lot more money than the $5. So don't be scammed. Do all this on the drone zone. Now, if you want to buy fancy stickers or labels, that's up to you, I guess, but you don't have to buy any. You can make your own. So don't get scammed that way. Also, with the remote ID, there are companies that are selling remote ID modules that are not FAA approved, do not meet the law, and you're being scammed. If you see one that's $20, probably a scam. Cheapest one I've seen that's approved is like 80. And hopefully they're coming down, but you can go on the FAA's website, like Louis was saying, and verify that this drone ID is on the list of approved IDs. So be careful with that. And don't forget, there's some states and even some cities and counties that require drone registration and fees and things like that. So make sure you know
Yeah, always
all
check
the
with the
rules.
local state and county ordinances in addition to.
Yeah, and we'll cover that in our roundup of reminders. Well, we're gonna go right into pre-flight and checklist if that works for you, Louis.
Let's get it.
Cool. So I know you're very familiar with checklist.
Yeah.
But what is a checklist? When you talk about it, if you've taken your 107, they talk about checklists. What is a checklist? Literally a list of things we need to do or remember or to look at. Why? So we don't forget things. Why do we care about that flying? It's a drone, right? Well, it's not a toy. You have an actual certificate. A lot of places require insurance. You have to register it. We take this serious. And if something goes wrong, one, you might have to report it to the FAA and the NTSB and law enforcement. So we make checklists to keep us safe from doing something we shouldn't, to making sure the drone works good, and to keep other people safe. Because we're human, we all forget things. So that's why we're doing it. The best way to say is what the slide says, a systematic approach to mitigate errors. I have it on a slide here coming up, but if other people screwed up, maybe we should put that on a checklist so we don't do the same thing, right? That's how I like to use checklists. Um, you might have just one checklist, depending on what your operation is, how complicated your drone is, where you're flying. It might be one real simple checklist with a couple things, so that's all you need to worry about. You might have dozens of checklists. If you're flying a bunch of different drones, then you probably have at least one for each drone, if not more. So before we go fly, there's obviously things we need to look at. If you've taken your 107, you know there's weather, there's aerospace, there's TFRs. I'm going to say that a couple times, TFRs, temporary flight restrictions. Those are all things we should check. And we don't really want to forget TFRs. So let's have a checklist that has that on there. Yep, there's no TFRs here. I know it seems basic, but want to make sure we cover all of our bases before we get out there and go flying. Do you have an SD card for your camera? It would suck to drive a couple hours, go to fly, and realize I forgot that at home because I didn't have it on checklist. Talking from experience, maybe, right? Who owns the land that we're going to be standing on? Where are we taking off and landing? Who owns that? Do we have permission to be there? Are there different drone laws for the land we're standing on? Remember, the FAA regulates the airspace. They're the ones that say where we can fly in the air. But who owns the land determines if we can take off or land or stand. So that's an important question to know before we drive out there and realize, oh, I need a permit. So PAVE, I have that highlighted because PAVE is a checklist. Pilot, aircraft, environment, external factors. FAA produces that checklist. We take and modify it, use it as we need to, but it's a checklist that we can look up part of the pre-flight as is. You see that I'm safe. Are we physically healthy enough to fly? Like, okay, well, the drone. Well, Louis can attest to it. It's 120 in Vegas, and you've got a 6-hour drone mission. You able to handle that? Do you have the water? Do you have the shade? Like, these are all very valid
Yeah, and a
questions.
lot of people bypass this one on there, but like we have a pre-flight checklist that runs through that, and obviously there's obviously always external mitigating factors, right? That you're trying to we're only trying to reduce risk in every possible operation, and the reality is, that's fine. We've got pilots that may be doing inspection on 25 electrical structures today, and in between the two, did he argue with his wife on the phone? Did something change? in your day that could possibly have changed the overall. Again, you mentioned fatigue, hydration, outdoor elements. Did the weather change? We actually even record on locations whether or not they had proper cell phone coverage and or what the data throughput was, right, as a commercial spot, because this is something that maybe we find out that, hey, it's great that they could fly there, but we can't actually transmit any data or anything from there as well, or we can't get a hold of the pilot as long as they're within that range of cell activity. So I can't stress enough how important the pre-flight checklist runs in when your operation, your operations include multiple pilots as well.
Yeah, and that rolls right into the rest of the phases, right? Pre-flights before we get out there, before we get outside, do we have everything to do it? Once we're there, once we're on site, once we start unpacking everything, that's when we packed it all up. There's all these other steps we need to be aware of. And then after we land and pack everything back up, do we have everything? There's okay, post-flight things that we need to accomplish. Were there cell issues that we need to let people know about? Was there GPS interference or outages that weren't forecast? Those are things we want to document. Is there maintenance that needs to be done on the drone? Was there um, any crash or anything we need to? All that needs to be in a checklist after every flight just to make sure you're ready to go for the next one. So any phase of flight, you have all kinds of different checklists if you want. Depends on how complicated and difficult your operation might be. Here's some example that was shared with some very basic things to check. It can be as in-depth, as simple, any format you want. The key, and this is the next slide, build the checklist, change it as you need to, but use it, right? That's the key. If you don't have one, you're just asking for something to be forgotten or missing a step. So build it, change it, use it. That's the rule checklist. Whatever you need. Um, like I said before, it will prevent most of our problems. Things happen, right? Birds come out of nowhere, batteries get old randomly. Things happen. But a lot of the things that happen should have been prevented, and a checklist could help us. And other people have made mistakes, so why do we need to make them too? Reach out. There's a lot of drone pros out there. There's tons, I mean, hundreds of hours of videos on YouTube, and a lot of them are good. Not all of them, but a lot of them are good. So you can learn from other people. We are doing great on time, everybody. I know we're talking fast, Louie and I. We're great talkers, aren't we?
I'm sorry, I have two speeds: not talking and then rabbit speed. So it's there, but yes,
Everyone on the team would concur that I am exactly the same. So
yeah, just get it
we're
out.
gonna have lots of time for questions. So we're gonna keep moving. We've covered registration, we've covered checklists. Could we spend hours discussing different things of checklists? Sure. But the point is you need to make what works for you. So if you've got questions, we said there's lots of resources. So we're going to cover general rules review again. And I know Greg's on here too, and he's done some of these general rules with Louis and I before. So if there's anything we miss, definitely Greg, feel free to jump on at the end for questions. But um, hopefully this is review for everybody. And if not, if you've never heard of some of these rules, then I'm glad you joined us because there's a lot more than what we're showing here. So,
For sure.
drones got to be registered. Got to have remote ID if you're 107, and if it's recreational, less than 5.55 pounds, 0.55 pounds. Just think, registered remote ID. Good. You cannot fly over people or moving cars. If the car is stationary legally, yes, you can fly. Right now, you can't fly over people or moving cars. Are there waivers to some of this? Working on it. Is there a possible change to the rules? Working on it. Is there different categories of aircraft in the regulations that allow this? Yes. You don't get any of those things by accident. You don't wake up one day and go to the store, buy a drone, and go, well, this must be a category two. I can fly over people. It doesn't work that way. So
Yeah.
if you heard so and so say, yeah, I got mine approved to fly over drones, yours isn't approved. It's a lot of paperwork. It can be done. Just remember, you can't fly over people in moving cars. So when you see other people doing it, it happens. Keep in mind, a lot of the videos we see, it's hard to tell where the drone actually was. It might look like they're over top of that crowd getting that shot, but some of these cameras have incredible zooms. They could be over the middle of a field and it looks like they're over the crowd. So don't just take it from a camera view that they might have broken this law. But if you see it happen in real life, you could say, hey, I don't think you're allowed to fly over those people, or you're flying over top of my head, and I know you're not allowed. Please don't do that anymore. There's ways to do it. You got to keep the drone in sight. Louis talked about FPV drones. This is a big one. I'm going to cover this here in a couple slides, but you gotta always have that drone in sight, plain and simple. Um, Max out to we can fly is 400 AGL in uncontrolled airspace. Remember, there's airspace. Controlled airspace, we have to have authorization to fly. Sometimes you're not going to get it. So misnomer there, and you can fly at night if you have the bright strobe lights. If you do have bright strobe, we're not talking like the green and red little flashies. We're talking bright, blind you. You can't even look at them strobe lights. You can fly at night. That's allowed. If you have them, leave them on. Like as a airplane pilot, we can't see drones. We cannot see them, but we can see those flashing lights day or night. So if if it works for your operation, just leave them on all the time. It really does make a difference. On that note, drones, remote controlled helicopters, airplanes, whatever, have to yield right away to all other aircraft. Anything that's manned, you got to get those drones out of the way. That doesn't necessarily mean you have to land them immediately and right into the river. I mean, we don't want to do that. But you hear an airplane, you see a helicopter, whatever, you got to make sure that drone does not interfere. And where it gets interesting is if a manned pilot sees a drone or thinks there's a drone and has to maneuver out of a perceived threat, the drone pilot's still at fault. So it's not you being the judge, it's that man pilot being the judge if you impeded or interfered with the operation. So just be very cautious. Um, can you legally fly at a lot of airports? Yeah, there's a lot of airports that are uncontrolled, but remember that interference. You might be legal until you interfere with a manned pilot, even though you weren't anywhere near him. So just be careful. Um, yeah, give right away. I've been a lot of pilots I know have been very close to drones in the air, but
It
usually it's
happens way too often, actually. Yeah.
way too
Way
often.
way too often. A lot of the newer drones are enabled as well to have some type of ADSB notification on there, but keep in mind it doesn't give you any type of proximity or height or time till impact or any of that information. Maybe you just get a lucky notification and that's it. But yeah, I mean just downing at all cost and figure it out after we should just look at it as a possible threat every time. Like take the drone out of the possible threat zone, and then we'll figure out what we could have done differently for the next time. If I could have flown in a different pattern, or if maybe the manned aircraft was at fault, right? And that is sometimes the case, especially in our commercial environments. But ultimately, it doesn't matter because the law is that we will just down drone. That's really it, right? UAS needs to
Yeah,
get out of the way.
very well said. All right, so we're gonna talk about line of sight. Don't need to beat this to death, but you can't sit there with binoculars saying I've still got it in sight. Doesn't work. Your if you have a visual observer helping you, great. You still have to, as the pilot in command, be able to see the drone. You can look down at your controller, you can do things, but you should be able to look up and see that drone. That's what visual observers are to help you. You can't have three, four, five, six, multiple VOs, daisy chain. Yep, they can still see it and they're letting me know, so I'm good. That doesn't work. They can't sit there with binoculars. It doesn't work the way. So if you're flying FPV, you have to have a visual observer because there's no way for you to look up and see it because you got the goggles on. So, a couple things to think in mind. The FPV is really, really cool. It's really fun. Just remember to have that VO who can see it all the time.
It is a
Uh,
common misconception on those for sure.
it is. And along with the misconception is this recreational pilot or recreational purpose, strictly for fun. It's that simple. I'm going to go fly for fun. If you don't have a camera or any sort of payload, it's probably believable you're just flying for fun. But if you have any other payload, depends what you're doing, right? What's the purpose of the flying? Maybe you are just flying for fun. All of a sudden you see something really cool, you take a picture of it, you post it online, that picture goes viral, you just made money, you didn't make money. It gets very gray very quick. So any flight that isn't purely for the fun of remote controlled flying is a 107 flight. It's a commercial operation. Doesn't have to have money, doesn't have to have anything, any service, anything connected to it. It's just plain not for fun. I want to go see what's over on the other side of my land. Well, that's not just for fun, is it? You have a purpose to go see what's on the other side of your land. It's not for fun. It can be that tricky. So yeah, just keep that in mind. It could be anything that isn't for fun. I want to take a picture for this. I want to go look at this. Not just for fun, is it? No, kind of sucks taking the fun out of stuff, but it don't want you all to get in
Fact.
trouble, right?
Fact, so.
Yeah. Recreational pilot, take the trust test. Louis talked about it. Free online, super easy. I say everybody take it. It's free online, super easy. Why not? Commercial is the 107. Couple different ways to get your 107. Can be tricky whether you have a manned pilot's license or not. It could be tricky. We got to renew it every other year. So you can do the renewal online for free. Don't forget to do your renewal. I don't know how many times it's happened to people. I got a 107, they're flying, they're busy doing stuff, and all of a sudden it's been a couple of years and they're expired. So it's easy to renew. Make sure you go renew it. We're getting into some other laws next. So we talked about FAA has the sole authority to regulate airspace, despite some other efforts you'll hear, people trying to regulate 50 feet above their house or 200 feet. Let the courts figure that out, right? But there are other state local laws for registration, where you can stand, where you cannot stand. We did a whole presentation on this, I think, a few months ago, where we get into some of the crazy stuff. Um, there's a lot of very unique laws. Think about national parks, national forests, state forests, historic sites. What about Department of Defense lands? What about national security lands? Do you know where they all are? Because sometimes they don't want you to know about military convoys or military ships, vessels. Is there laws with that? Yeah, there is laws for all those things. So do some research. You can use a checklist once you start learning these laws. Do a checklist, check your airspace. Lots of fun, good things there. We talked about the aircraft, about trespassing privacy laws. I think every single state has a privacy law that's been updated to include drone and or aerial camera stuff. Be a good neighbor. Like we know we're just mapping, we're doing our mission. People sometimes like to assume the worst out of everyone. So just try to be a good neighbor. Don't call the airport asking for permission to fly. If you need approval, get your Lance authorization or go through Drone Zone for the authorization and follow what the authorization says you need to do. But I used to work at airports and we would get calls every day. Hey, can I fly my drone? We're not the FAA. You need authorization or you don't need authorization, but don't call the airport, right? Unless you're doing something and the FAA says you must call the airport, which you'll know. Um, don't forget, you are the remote pilot in command. You're the one in charge. No matter what, you are in charge of that aircraft. You have a certificate from the FAA. You have rights to fly. So don't let other people interfere with the safety of your flight. I know it's easier said than done, but definitely remember you're the boss. You're the one in control. Law enforcement comes up and if they're usually they're very understanding. Most law enforcement people I know all fly drones or involved with the drone operations, so most of the time they're curious or want to know what you're doing because they also fly. That's how I am when I see people flying. It's like, oh, what do you got? I want to see it, because I like to fly them. But if for whatever reason somebody interferes or impedes the safe operation of your aircraft, let's say somebody rips the control out of your hand, they just created a very serious safety issue. So keep that in mind.
Oh,
You've got rights and there are FAA laws that protect us certificated pilots. Um, and another common misconception I always want to talk about this because I hear it too often. Um, in the regulations, right, in Part 107 says something along the lines of any of these rules can be ignored or broken to handle an in-flight emergency. I'm paraphrasing, but the point of that is if there's something going on with the drone, there's a fire, it's out of control, there's an emergency with it, and there's possible hazard to someone on the ground or manned aircraft, you can forget about the altitude rules. You can forget about the airspace rules. You can forget about whatever rules are in Part 107 to handle that in-flight emergency. That's what that rule says. I hear from folks every now and then, hey, there's an emergency. I don't need a license to go fly. There's an emergency. I don't need authorization because I'm answering the emergency. Different emergency.
Not quite
Or-
the same. Yeah, not quite the
Yeah.
same.
Yeah. So make sure you're following all the 107, Part 107 rules. Um,
That does come up, and we've run into that in a commercial situation before. We've had to put a drone behind a building and purposely break BVLS, to make way for a very low flying inspection aircraft. So you got a helicopter coming through that there just was nowhere else for us to go except further away, which put a building between us, right? And then ultimately we're rocking completely off of that. But these type of situations, you need to have the wherewithal to know when you're making that decision live as an RPIC. That's really just what it comes down to, and be ready to answer for it. Right? That's always the case. That's why having all of your duckies in a row and making sure that when and if you are asked, whether it be as high up as the NTSB or just a ramp inspector or maybe local law enforcement that's just trying to finish their report and finish their job for the day and go home, just be confident in whatever choice you had to make and why you made it, and over document it all.
exactly. All right. Safety thoughts, battery safety. We just had, I want to say it was last week, we had a very, very nice new house in Wisconsin burned to the ground from a drone battery. Yeah, just bought the drone, had it plugged in for a couple hours, whole house burned up. Um,
Yikes.
so when we say battery safety, make sure your batteries are in good shape. When you're charging them, at least be in the same room as them. Don't be sleeping. Most drone batteries are fine, but when they're not, they're not. There's tons of videos online about lithium batteries exploding, drone batteries exploding. I'm not trying to scare anybody because 99% of the time it's fine, but you don't want to be that 1%. When you just sit in the room, have a plan. Um, if the batteries go bad, they can go bad. You can start seeing signs of them. You need to know if you got a smart battery, what each cell should have for normal voltage. If it's anything abnormal, if there's anything weird about that battery that isn't normal, then you should know what normal is. Get rid of it. Because it is pretty hazardous. Like a grill, like if you have a charcoal grill, is a great place to store them outside. Um, Otherwise, a lot of places will take them. Propeller, rotor awareness, they're sharp. I've seen fingertips chopped off. So I know hand catching is simple, easy. The mats work good too, or a hard surface. I'm not saying I don't do it sometimes. I'm not saying you should do it or not do it. Just checklist, right? Be safe. Maintenance of the drones, especially if you've had a hard landing or run into something. Good maintenance. Satellite reception is a huge one with stuff. People get used to. I take off, let go, do a mapping mission. It does the same thing every time until you don't have GPS. We had a solar storm a couple of weeks ago that was so strong we lost GPS in the airplanes. Um, and those don't need nearly as many GPS as the drones do. Drones typically like 12 to 15 satellites for the GPS. Airplanes are happy with four. So you can imagine if our airplanes are sending us warnings, it's probably a big bad day for drones.
The KP index is definitely a heavy item to check out. In the commercial world, we've downed entire days of flights just because the KP index rises above a spot where it could possibly cause, especially when you're dealing in electrical inspections or anything around hot wires, where you're like, that's not a time where we could possibly just get the old Inspire float going there. We don't need that at the last minute. You know what I mean? So great point to bring that up, though.
All right, our last few tips to fly safely. Checklist. Wow, I've heard this several times today, huh? Weather matters. So KP index, call it space weather forecast. It's something we use constantly, but your regular weather matters. There's laws, right? Pro 107 says minimum weather we have to fly. What's 3 miles visibility look like? If you don't know, it might be time to start doing some training when you can verify what 3 miles versus 4 miles versus 2 miles visibility actually looks like. Um, but winds are the biggest factor, probably winds and temperature, probably the two biggest factors on drones. So if you're like, wow, I've never thought of that, we need to do some more reading and more research on weather for drones.
Yeah, to
We
add to
would,
that real quick, Levi, just the weather changes too. Obviously, I'm heavy on the West Coast over here, so it's very common to be maybe have a flight pattern that's at the end of a cove or a valley outlet or something other there where it could be the perfect flying situation when you get there. Yet 15 minutes later, you could have a 35-mile-an-hour gust coming through the valley. So it's just great, pre-check to always do your homework as well. If you're not familiar with the area or the terrain, finding out more about some of those things. Keeping in mind that altitude matters too, right? We're out there doing some of these things, and if your takeoff is from 5,000 up, I mean, it provides a whole different weather environment. You know what I mean? Sometimes we're dealing with that. And that's something we deal with pretty often here in Nevada, California area as well. So great point to
yeah,
look into that every time.
yeah, weather is huge. And you just were mentioning interference from power lines. You got to think cell towers and radio stations, TV stations. That interference can be no joke on the simple Wi-Fi signal we're using on our drones. So
For sure.
don't forget about that. Let's see, I got a couple more here. No, the drone, right? I just mentioned what's normal. What's the normal battery voltage per cell? What's not? You got to know the system. That's nothing real new. Situational awareness, that's easy to say. Sometimes really tough to do. It's easy to get sucked in. Keep your head on a swivel, looking around, people around you, birds, um, all that stuff. And common sense, same line. It's easy to say use common sense, but if it was easy, then we wouldn't have to say it all the time, right?
It would require
TFRs,
common sense.
exactly. I told you I mentioned TFRs again. TFRs, check for TFRs. All right, moving on. We're almost to the questions. Got some resources, highlighted some of the really good ones. They're all good. I use all of these. My checklist, my pre-flight checklist, I use everything on here besides the Leap. Um, but I use Leap, folks, when I can't find what I need off the checklist. And Leap is a law enforcement assistant program. So when I say I use them, our department, the Wisconsin Department of Transportation, we reach out to these folks for certain things. But yeah, this is good resources. I'm not giving you anything that I haven't used myself on a regular basis.